Okay. Okay, I think you can play the video.
Inclusion in education for me is that allowing our young people to express themselves and not being discriminated and stigmatized in their own schools. Because when the environment is good, we try to grow, we try to be a better version of ourselves.
It would mean gender affirming and inclusive classrooms, as well as the provision of conducive and supportive learning environments.
Inclusion and the acknowledgement of minority and vulnerable populations in school curricula not only introduces, but also deepens an understanding of intersectionality.
To support everybody in education to have their rights to know and learn and be who they are, and make a progressive change for all the minority in this country.
In the context of our advocacy, we prioritize peer education, focusing on sexual and reproductive health, gender justice and inclusivity, and SOGST education for young people, and of course, policy lobbying. What we are doing here is that we will train this young people population through leadership, communication, and advocacy development skills. After they got trained, they will go to their communities and do the advocacy work there.
So some of the projects that Meta and I have worked on as part of IOLN are allyship workshops, where we provide introductory sections to allyship and how people can move from a passive ally to being an active ally, explaining the importance of allyship and the different prejudices and discrimination queer people face in the community in their daily lives.
It first started out with being mostly for university students, and last year we decided to focus on parents.
I think focusing on the participants drawing from their personal experience is really what drives our allyship workshops to be effective and impactful.
We organized the LGBT Youth Leadership Workshop. So we're trying to include all of the identity within the LGBT community to come together and learn about the gender expression, gender identity, and create the activism work in your area, whether it's on the ground or online. Our youth leader, they also help us to collect the data of the human rights situation of the LGBT youth in Thailand to write a statement to the UN mechanism. We gather around 12 recommendations from member states to hold the Thailand accountable to support the LGBT right in Thailand.
One of the major changes that we have seen is that young LGBTIQ people in schools are now more active. They even represent their schools in the national and regional level because they gain self-confidence to show your talent and skills and just be who you are.
So with our allyship workshop, we feel that we've reached more parents, which has definitely improved the quality of conversations and improved the care that queer children get. These parents came back to us and said, "Oh, thank you for holding that. We were able to talk to our children in a calm and peaceful manner without having our child be fearful or hesitate to talk to us about their issues."
We see that a lot of young people have started to create the activism work within their local area. Right now, we have the workshop all across Thailand. Young people are so inspired to support the rights at the national level.
A message to my peers, always remember that nothing about us without us. Take the action, be part of our community.
Sustain yourself, to take it slow because there is a lifetime's worth of opportunities and work to be done.
Just be who you are and believe in yourself, and just wherever you can just support and make an impact of your own. You can write your own journey to support the advocacy in your area, in your home, or in your education institution.
All right. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. I am Leo from Youth Lead, and I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar, Youth in Focus, Driving LGBTIQ plus Inclusive Education in Asia. I will be your moderator for this afternoon. So this webinar is in commemoration of the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia, which was held on 17 May last Sunday. Youth Lead, with the support of UNESCO Regional Office in Bangkok and funded by Christian Dior Couture, organized this webinar to highlight the rights of young people as fundamental to democracy and to provide a space for young LGBTIQ plus learners to share their experience navigating discrimination and violence in education settings. This webinar has a few objectives: to highlight youth leadership, agency, and lived experiences in advancing LGBTIQ plus inclusive education, to showcase promising youth-led practices, to facilitate dialogue in advancing equity, gender equality, and social justice in education, as well as to strengthen our understanding of enabling factors and entry points for integrating LGBTIQ plus inclusion within education systems. So to kick off our webinar, I would like to start with an interactive poll through Mentimeter. So let me share my screen. Okay. So if you can see my screen now, yes. So if you can see my screen, you can scan the QR code or go to menti.com and input the code on the screen to answer the prompt question: what does LGBTIQ plus inclusive education mean for you? I'll give everyone a few minutes, maybe 2 minutes, to quickly answer, and these answers will pop up live on the screen for us to see. So, yes, what does LGBTIQ plus inclusive education mean for everyone? Great, so we're seeing some answers now. Respect. Start of a good life as education impacts my whole life, definitely. Classroom and school that are safe for all learners, allowing queer and trans people to design the curriculum. Okay. Great answers. We'd love to hear from all of you. Yeah, I'll just give everyone a few more, maybe a second. Okay, the space that students can be themselves. Education that allows LGBTIQ plus learners to be themselves, be safe, and that meets their needs. Yes. Okay, so thank you, everyone. It looks like inclusive education means a lot for us. Yeah, we have more responses here. Safe schools without bullying, inclusive curriculum, learning about LGBTIQ plus topics makes you feel respected. Yes, education is definitely important for a lot of us, especially how it can be more inclusive. A lot of us are part of the LGBTIQ plus community, and we've been to school. A lot of us have been to school, and a lot of us have also experienced discrimination of some form. So we really want to change things for the better for the future generation and for those who are still studying now. Next, I'd like to ask one more question. Let me see. Okay, what does an inclusive learning environment look like? So I think if you scanned it through your phone, the screen should have changed now, and you can answer this question same as before. Okay, destabilizing the power differences between educator and student. Wow, that's a big one. Where everyone feels safe to express their identity, leaving no one behind. Teacher understands diversity and learners, and where everyone is welcome. Yes, where students thrive. Inclusive language, not assuming everyone is cis hetero. Great. Okay, one more. An environment where everyone can really be themselves in every single way and have no fear to exist in the learning space. They'll be able to learn, ask, and enjoy education without restrictions. That's great. Maybe one more if we have one more. Okay, last one. Everyone confident to be themselves and easy to get in touch with knowledge. Great. So thank you everyone for participating. I'll stop sharing my screen now. So as we can tell from your answers, young LGBTIQ plus people in Asia experience bullying, discrimination, and other forms of violence in education settings. And it's really important for all of us to feel safe and respected in these education settings or learning spaces. In a 2023 UNESCO report, pervasive stigma, discrimination, bullying, and violence on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression continue to exist in education settings around the world, with damaging effects on learners' educational participation, performance, and completion, physical and mental health, and long-term employment and economic prospects. So as we've heard from some people before, education really affects our whole life. Education really affects our whole life. And, these are just some of the reasons why conversations on inclusive education are more important than ever. Now, to welcome us and give us further technical insights on inclusive education from UNESCO, I'd like to welcome Janelle Babb, Regional Advisor for Education for Health and Well-being from the UNESCO Regional Office in Bangkok and Office for UN Coordination for Asia and the Pacific, to give her opening remarks. Over to you, Janelle.
Thank you, Leo. And to our dear distinguished partners, all of our youth leaders, partners, and colleagues, and good friends, good afternoon to you all. On behalf of UNESCO, it is really my great pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar on advancing LGBTIQ plus inclusive education through youth leadership and systems change in Asia, to observe the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Intersex Discrimination, and Transphobia 2026. As Leo said, on 17 May each year, LGBTIQ plus A communities and allies around the world mark this important day. And every initiative contributes to a shared global moment of visibility, solidarity, and action. This year's theme, At the Heart of Democracy, reminds us that equality, participation, and human dignity must be central to our education systems. UNESCO's mandate as lead UN organization on Sustainable Development Goal 4 is aligned with this focus, championing the right to education that ensures learning content, learning culture, and learning spaces enable every learner to feel seen, to feel safe, to feel respected, and able to learn and to thrive. Together with our education partners across Asia Pacific, we know that we cannot waver from this vision, including in contexts where we can see a concerning erosion of fundamental rights and freedoms. Sadly, too many LGBTIQ plus learners still continue to face bullying, exclusion, and unwelcoming school environments, with studies showing, as Leo has mentioned, that in some contexts, over half report feeling unsafe. At the same time, we do have cause to feel hopeful because there is growing progress, with countries and partners in advancing inclusive policies, strengthening teacher capacity, and supporting youth-led initiatives. UNESCO is proud to be an education leader at the heart of democracy, choosing to amplify youth voices in diverse spaces. It's why LGBTIQ plus QA plus youth leaders were among speakers of the first Asia Pacific Youth Dialogue on the post 2030 education agenda that was organized just last weekend in Bangkok under the patronage of the UNESCO Director General, who was visiting the country at the time. And it's also why we support meaningful youth engagement at the highest level of decision making on the global education agenda through the SDG 4 Youth and Student Network. It's because we know that young people are not only beneficiaries of education systems, they are powerful agents of change. Today's webinar highlights youth leadership from Japan and the Philippines, demonstrating how advocacy, partnerships, and lived experiences can drive the kind of education systems that young people demand and that they deserve. I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to Youth Lead and the Regional Youth Project Reference Group of the UNESCO project to enhance youth leadership for championing LGBTIQ plus living spaces in Asia Pacific, supported by Christian Dior Couture. I thank them for their strong partnership in co-organizing this webinar. This discussion also invites us to reflect on how the project or project efforts in general like these can be sustained and scaled through stronger collaboration among youth, educators, policymakers, and other diverse partners. UNESCO remains firm in our commitment to work with and for young people, such as you, to fulfill their right to education, including the meaningful integration of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression perspectives within school curricula and teacher education programs. We look forward to continuing this shared journey toward more inclusive and equitable education systems across the region. Thank you, everyone, and my best wishes for a dynamic and inspiring discussion today.
Thank you so much, Janelle, for giving us better understanding of LGBTIQ plus inclusive education in Asia, as well as on what UNESCO Bangkok is doing to support and empower youth-led organizations and initiatives to advance LGBTIQ plus inclusion. Before we begin this webinar, I would like to request everyone to join in for a group photo while we are still fresh and new. For those comfortable opening their cameras for the group photo, please open it now. I'd like to ask my colleague Agatha to take the photo for us. Agatha, over to you.
Thank you very much, everyone. So we're gonna take pictures 2 times. So pose for the first one. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. Now the second one. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much, everyone. Over to you, Leo.
Thank you, Agatha, and thank you everyone for joining our group photo. Now, as a reminder, I would like to ask participants to please keep their microphones muted throughout the webinar to ensure smooth conversations for everyone. Participants will have an opportunity to ask questions or share their reflections later on in the webinar. You may also use the chat box to share any burning questions you have in mind or any input you have, and we will come back to them later. So moving on, I'd like to invite our colleague Warapot, Associate Project Officer at UNESCO Bangkok, to lead a discussion on youth-led initiatives and practical approaches to partnerships and advancing inclusive learning environments. Warapot, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leo. We'll now move to the next session, which focusing on youth-led action and inclusive learning environments. In the session, we will hear directly from 2 implementing partners who have been leading important work in Japan and the Philippines. They will share practical approaches and key achievements from the project implementation, including how youth-led and youth-serving organizations can contribute making school and learning spaces safer and more inclusive to the needs of the diverse learner. Each speaker will have 7 minutes to present. First, it's my pleasure to invite Mika Yukushi, founder and CEO of NPO-REBIT Japan. Mika, over to you.
Hi, Warapa. Thank you very much for the introduction. And Can everybody see my slide right now? Perfect. Thank you so much. Hi everyone, and thank you very much for having me today. I'm Mika Yakushi, and I'm the founder and representative director of REBIT, a certified nonprofit organization working in Japan. Today, I'm very proud to present the outcome of Diversity's 2025, an innovative leadership program supported by UNESCO. Since 2009, REBIT has worked towards creating a society where LGBTQ people can choose their own future just as they are. Our framework focuses on three pillars: learning, working, and living. In learning, we provide SOGI trainings at schools and local governments. To date, we have delivered more than 1,600 sessions, reaching around 235,000 participants, while also supervising official school textbooks. In working, we offer career support and corporate diversity training, having supported over 26,000 LGBTQ job seekers and conducted 600 corporate workshops. In living, we operate Japan's first disability welfare service, especially for LGBTQ individuals with mental disabilities in Tokyo and Osaka, and have advised more than 200 local governments on SOGI inclusive policies. Through this continuous life cycle support system, we ensure that LGBTQ youth can learn safely, work safely, and live safely in their communities. Building on the 16-year foundation, we collaborated with UNESCO in 2025 to launch a national survey of nearly 5,000 LGBTQs. The finding revealed an ongoing crisis. 54% of LGBTQ teens experienced suicidal ideation in the past year, and 90% faced severe difficulties at school in the past year. This data became an engine for advocacy and was covered by 32 major media outlets and used directly in high-level briefings with the Ministry of Education. To break down these social barriers, we launched the Diversities Program. Our goal was to transition youth into decision makers. We selected 39 youth leaders managing 11 innovative projects across 8 regions of Japan. By providing them with seed funding, initiative coaching, and organizational tools, we empower them to engineer solutions for their own communities. Social change requires strong skills. We put our youth leaders through 6 training modules covering advocacy skills, project design, and financial accounting. We operated under strict rainbow safeguarding rules, ensuring psychological safety, privacy protection, and risk management, so these young leaders could advocate without fear to exposure or criticism. To bridge grassroots passion with real action, we connected our youth with world-class mentors, leaders from leading organizations, including top executives from EY Japan, Coca-Cola, and LVMH, provided direct professional advice sessions. This mentorship taught our youth how to change local challenges into the language of social and corporate diversity. The outcomes of these 11 projects have been extraordinary. In Akita, a very conservative prefecture, youth established a vital safe space regional hub. In Hyogo, the LGBTQ Youth Pride Project designed specialized safeguarding codes to safely deliver diversity workshops in elementary schools. Meanwhile, at Tohoku University, the team developed campus ground rules and sex education materials, earning the university's official DEI award from the dean. Our leaders also targeted specific areas. Jiu na Box, a project founded by medical students, created SOGI inclusive training materials for future healthcare professionals. In Safer Garden, a group at Doshisha University published a detailed campus guidebook for understanding SOGI. These initiatives are directly closing the safety gaps in medical access in higher education. REBIT expanded these campus success by establishing a National University Network meeting in 2025, bringing together 11 major universities that are active in LGBTQ support, including the University of Tokyo and Waseda University. We created a shared system for sharing good practices, ensuring that this inclusion continues for a long time. This cycle led to March 2026, was Japan's first LGBTQ Soji Youth Forum. We gathered 118 leaders from governments, companies, and universities. Through this forum, our results widely reached both the public and private sectors and were featured in the media. This was a critical timing for us, especially as Japan prepares for the upcoming once-in-a-decade revision of the national school curriculum known as a course of study. We believe that the voice of these young people will be the driving force to change the future of education in Japan. In this project, in numbers, this project cycle achieved a huge media reach of 28.5 million people, produced over 115 unique advocacy materials, and built a strong peer network. Looking ahead, I'm thrilled to announce that this new multi-year support secured from the United States Japan Foundation, the Diversities Program will scale continuously from 2026 through 2028. Our shared vision with UNESCO is a society where diversity is not a weakness, but a celebrated strength. By supporting our youth leaders, we are planting the seeds for the future that truly leaves no one behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mika. Thank you for sharing experience from Ribbit. I am personally impressed by the youth survey response that you received the response from more than 5,000 responses, and you use that responses to inform the advocacy development and turn the advocacy development to implement at the diverse institutions. 9 regions across Japan through 11 projects. This is amazing. And you engage with many bodies, including the government, in terms of like to inform the curriculum reform. And thanks for sharing that you will be continue doing the diversity project, continue planting the seed in the next 2 years. And we will now turn over to the second speaker. It's my pleasure to invite Carisi, Program Officer at Babalanes, the Philippines. Carisi, over to you.
Yes, so thank you, Warpot, for the introduction. So as Warpot mentioned, by the way, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carisi. I'm a programs officer from Babaylanes. So Babaylanes is a non-government organization based in the Philippines. So our work focuses on forwarding LGBTQI rights. So very relevant to this project is that we mobilize more than 30 LGBTQI student organizations across the Philippines through a student network. So today, as we commemorate IDAHOBIT and this year's theme, we also celebrate, of course, the courage and leadership of these LGBTQIA youth across the Philippines. So this theme reminds us that, of course, democracy is not only about during elections or in institutions, but it is also about participation. And for many LGBTQIA young people, especially students, these questions remain deeply personal. So they always ask themselves, can they safely express themselves in schools? Can they organize? Can they speak without being discriminated or and be listened to? So this is why exactly the project was actualized. So next slide, please. So our project CCAT, or strengthening initiatives and knowledge for advocacies towards LGBTQIA plus education. So it supports LGBTQI student leaders in advancing inclusive education through leadership and advocacy in their areas. Next slide, please. But beyond the acronym, the word also means locally, it is to shine. And throughout this project, we have witnessed that the youth actually did shine through organizing, education, and the community action. Okay, next slide, please. So this is just a filler slide. So this year the theme at the heart of democracy. So at its core, so CCAT believes that democracy becomes stronger when people are given the resources, platforms, and support to organize, advocate, and participate in shaping public conversations. Next slide, please. So across the country, CCAT supported youth leaders, transform campuses, communities, and even online spaces into venues for democratic participation and collective action. So the 5 supported projects were grouped into 3 pillars. So first is awareness building. So this was done through gender sensitivity trainings, capacity building. The next pillar is strengthening of support systems. So through forming peer groups and establishing help desks that address issues specific to LGBTQIA plus youth. And also policy advocacy. So some projects focus on reforming and lobbying for policies. So some organizations also focus on creating safer and more inclusive campuses for students and spaces where young people can learn, lead, and exist without the fear of discrimination. So next slide, please. And one of the most meaningful aspects of the CCAT project was its intentional effort to support student organizations beyond major urban centers or like areas in the Philippines. So we were intentional with targeting particular groups from regional and Islamic communities where the conservative tone is more robust. So conversations on gender and sexuality are often far more difficult and dangerous in those areas. So CCAT recognized that inclusion also means that ensuring the support reaches young people whose voices are often overlooked. And also, the student organizations are often underfunded and excluded from the spaces, even though that they are part of. So, sorry. And yet, despite this, of course, the fire within the students are still very much alive, and that they are very eager to organize. I would also like to share that one student leader shared an experience of experiencing police violence, and yet they stood their ground, and they were also directly able to challenge and institutionalize change. And that moment reminds us that for many youth, advocacy is not abstract, it is personal, and it affects their daily lives. And it can mean risking safety simply to exist openly, to organize, or to demand inclusion. And also others initiated community discussions on human rights, helping local communities engage in conversations that are often silenced. And here we are also proud that several groups use art, digital campaigns, workshops to make advocacy more accessible and relatable to their fellow young people. Sorry, next slide, please. So at a time when many LGBTQI youth continue to experience discrimination, harassment, and exclusion, supporting youth-led initiatives become an act of protecting democracy itself. Because when LGBTQIA students are excluded from decision-making, democracy itself becomes incomplete, right? So that is why CCAT really focused on the work of the youth, because they are not simply participating they're the ones shaping the democracy that we see right now and will be seeing in the future. So here, CCAT celebrates the courage and leadership of LGBTQIA plus youth who continue to organize, educate, and create and advocate despite discrimination and exclusion. So next slide, please. That's all for my presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Karis. Um, Actually, maybe Karis, you could let us know CCAT has the meaning in Tagalog.
Yes, so the meaning of CCAT is to shine, to be your best self.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And actually, the project in the Philippines and in Japan, which led by Rebates and Babanis, is completing soon. So congratulations to both of you for this amazing work. And once again, thank you so much for your rich presentation. Your example remind us that young people youth-led action are not only for awareness raising, but for directly advocate and engage partners, stakeholders driving change. And thank you so much once again. We will now proceed to the next part of the agenda. Leo, over to you.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you so much, Warapot and colleagues, for those interesting examples on promoting and advocating for LGBTIQ plus inclusion in education. You know, I think these approaches are definitely useful in giving us inspiration on how we can do our own advocacy in our different country and community contexts. You know, I know that advocating for LGBTIQ plus rights for issues, especially for young people, can be very difficult in more conservative areas. And partnerships to achieve these goals, you know, may not always be possible, but you know, as we've heard from Rebit and Babaylanes, working with education institutions are also definitely important. That's also not the only way, and there are creative ways in which we can make education settings safer for young people, for young LGBTIQ plus people. And it's also equally important to center young LGBTIQ plus people's voices in all this conversation. So moving on, we have a panel discussion to talk more in depth on approaches to advocacy, engaging schools, and the challenges for young advocates to advocate for inclusive education. Joining us in this panel discussion, we have Dr. Timo Ohanen, lecturer from the Faculty of Learning Sciences and Education at Thammasat University, Dr. Satipop Somtua, head teacher at the Satit Prasanamit Secondary Demonstration School, and also Riddhi Somsomsuk, International Board Chairperson of Youth Lead. So welcome, everyone. We're happy to have you here in our panel discussion. So to begin, I'd like to start with Dr. Timo. So Dr. Timo, you are a researcher, an advocate for LGBTIQ plus rights and issues. I know I've definitely referenced one of your articles in one of my thesis, a little lore drop. But as we've heard earlier, young LGBTIQ plus people really want to feel safe and respected in school. And we know that one of the ways that young people can feel safe and respected and secure in schools is through inclusive policies. Could you tell us how can schools integrate LGBTIQ plus inclusion into their school policies?
Okay, I think I'll need to, firstly, thanks for the introductions and thank you for the citation as well. So I'd like to go a little bit back from the question. So my entry point to this work, my background is in psychology, and I'd like to start by sharing a little bit about study on the mental health of children and youth of diverse sexual orientations, gender identities, and expressions in Thailand that was conducted a few years back with kind funding from Save the Children Thailand. And compared with the figures that Mika shared earlier from Japan, I was struck by how similar the numbers were in terms of like suicidality, feeling unsafe, these kinds of things. And when we talk about anxiety and depression, we had about 70 to 80% of the participants reporting at least mild anxiety and depression. And if we talk about severe level anxiety and depression, it was about 20%. Now, the question then is, what is causing all this mental health trouble? And based on our analysis, there were sort of three major modifiable risk factors that I'd like to mention. So the biggest one by far was violence, which includes bullying and sexual harassment, for example. The second one was discrimination in its various forms, not just in schools, but including schools and other contexts in their lives. And the third one is what we called SOGI change efforts, which might make you think of a so-called conversion therapy, but in our case, it's broader than that. It's basically any kind of being forced to do something so that's intended to change who you are in terms of your sexual orientation, gender identity, and usually most importantly, gender expression, because that's the most visible part of what teachers, for example, see in their students' schools. And so all of these three things were major risk factors. Now the question then is, what can schools do to prevent these three kinds of risk factors? And I think since violence is the biggest thing, a bullying prevention policy would be the biggest thing. Now, based on my previous research in Thailand and some other research as well, most high schools seem to have regulations, but they don't have like an active anti-bullying policy or an active anti-bullying sort of measures. And this is probably what makes bullying still be so prevalent in its various forms in schools. Sexual harassment is perhaps a little bit under the carpet, but it was also very common among our participants in that same study. So if schools have comprehensive measures to prevent violence, that could really go far. And combine that with policies to build understanding of sexual and gender diversity, that could be the perfect package for that particular risk factor. Now, when we think about discrimination, what could it be? It could be things like uniform policies that are not flexible enough, but it could also be things like, okay, this activity is only for boys, this activity is only for girls, and if you don't fit in, then you're excluded. There have been stories in the past, for example, about a transgender student being chosen as the head student of the school, but being excluded because they didn't want the trans student to be, leading the school and all that sort of stuff. So if schools can have some sort of measures in place to prevent those kinds of things, then that would be good. And thirdly, SOGI change efforts, I think that's partly dependent on official policies like the uniform policies, because when teachers have to enforce uniform policies, which are not inclusive by default, which are only based on sex at birth, that is a form of SOGI change efforts as well as discrimination. But it also goes beyond that. It's also a question of do the teachers realize that they shouldn't be forcing kids to be in a particular masculine or feminine role, and that I think it's a question of the school culture. It's a question of awareness as well. There could be some policies about that, but I think eliminating those policies that are actively harmful to students, like inflexible uniform regulations, inflexible hairstyle regulations, and putting in place anti-bullying policies that actually work. Those, I think, would be the key things. Now, at least in the Thai context, there isn't really a national anti-bullying legislation, unlike, for example, in the Philippines. I don't know how well it works over in your context, but I know that there is one, and that could be an interesting model if it works. And so at the moment, it pretty much depends on the schools, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from Dr. Sadip how that works at ProSummit as well. But so that's one thing. it's up to the schools to manage this kind of thing at the moment, at least in Thailand. Uniform regulations used to be mandated nationally. The schools have very little flexibility, but now, at least in Thailand, they are free to issue their own regulations. So that's another area where if the schools have understanding of how to make it inclusively, how not to force kids into particular kinds of uniforms and hairstyles because of their sex at birth, then that could be the key thing. And as for SOGI change efforts, I think it's mostly a matter of building understanding among the teachers that it would be better to just let the kids to be themselves and not force them into a particular role. I think that's all for me for this question. I hope I didn't take too much time.
Thank you, Dr. Timo. No, you definitely didn't take a lot of time. Thank you for your insights. It's definitely, important to hear these factors, and it's also really cool to hear, some of the policy changes. As you've mentioned, Philippines. Just curious, really quickly, are there any other, tangible policy change that you've seen? Not just in the Philippines, but maybe in other parts of Asia?
Well, actually, from Thailand, I forgot to mention about the textbook reform on health education textbooks, which was undertaken in 2019. And I think that's an interesting case study because what possibly the first place was the enactment of the Gender Equality Act in 2015, which has a wording that makes it inclusive of gender expression. And since there was that law in place and there was research in place proving that the existing textbooks were quite stigmatizing and sexist really in character, that then allowed a high school student and an activist to file a complaint, and that made the Ministry of Education mandated to revise those textbooks. And that was a really interesting opening, a window of opportunity, if you like, for NGOs to work with the government, work with the Ministry of Education, and issue guidelines for revising those textbooks. And there has been research showing that the new ones are better. They are not perfect, but they are better, certainly. So that's another sort of very helpful policy change. And I think it also shows how these changes are sort of built on several building blocks from the past that made them possible. So that would be one example.
Thank you. That's very cool to hear. And yeah, we are all, setting up those building blocks as we move forward in time, right? Like we can't always guarantee that some initiatives are going to be perfect, but at least, we can improve things over time. So now I'd like to move on to Dr. Satipop. As a head teacher of a secondary demonstration school, I'm really curious to hear from your side. How do you create an inclusive learning environment? And were there any challenges that you faced as part of as an educator? And how do you work with young people? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, good afternoon, all. I'm very glad to be here to share the policy and the inclusion method and the methodology that we use here at the Prasad Meet Demonstration School. First of all, I just would like to give the idea about the demonstration school a little bit. That I would like to say it's just linked to what we do here. I should say that we are quite flexible in terms of the policy, that because we are not under the Ministry of Education, right? We are under the Ministry of the University. And with the context of the demonstration school that we are here, we do have a differences program. So with the differences program that we offer here at the school, that is more like generate the exception of the diversity of the student themselves and also like the diversity of the people in the school. Here at Prasad Meet Demonstration School, we do have like 4 differences program. We have the Thai program, international program, and we have the special need program for the special needs student, and we do have the Thai lingo program. So you can see that with the dimension of the 4 differences program, with the inclusive learning for the special needs student as well. So I would say that like the inclusion here in this school is not just only the LGBTQ plus or with the diversity of the student. It start with the recognizing that every student deserves to feel safe, respected, and seen. I mean, like all of the policy is embedding into the existing student well-being and anti-bullying, like Dr. Timo just said. So we are really lucky that we do have the international program. So with the international program that we offer the British curriculum here. So with the British curriculum, the anti-bullying campaign is a priority of the kind of the slide, the priority for the school to make sure that we we make sure that we are like kind of just like promote the student to not do like an anti-bullying campaign, to make sure that the discrimination is the you cannot do this that at the school. And with the demonstration school, some of the event and some of like a platform that we are like kind of like provide for the student here in our school. We do have the Pride Month as well. Yeah, for our own school Pride Month. During the Pride Month, like an international Pride Month, we do organize the Pride Month here in our school. We do have a lot of kind of just like the group of the student voice. That is very important for me. Yeah, if you ask me like the big challenges for like to do the LGBTQ plus inclusion in the other school is might be not have the voice of the student is very, very important. What I try to say is that especially like our student voice is very strong and is quite impact to the board of the university as well and the board of the school. During the Pride Month, like I just said, like the event is organized by students. Yeah, it's not only the LGBTQ student as well. What I'm gonna say is that we just like bring all of the student, everyone awareness of this like of this event. Yeah, and even like I was here for 15 years since I was here since I was a teacher until now I become the head teacher. I can say that like the issue when I was the head of discipline, the issue about like the anti-bullying with the LGBTQ parties very minimal. It's just like one or two cases that happened in the past. But you should understand we flashback like last 15 years. And if you compare like nowadays, right, it's more open and the people is just more like understand the LGBTQ plus. Our school, we do allow the student to wear the uniform that they would like to do as well. We didn't see the difference on that. Very important thing is that not only student that I would like to share, the staff, the teacher as well. We do allow the teacher as a head teacher. One of my teachers has come into my school and they said that, okay, Mr. Boy, can I dress like a woman dress to school? I think it's fine. Why not? Yeah, you are the teacher anyway. So we allow that to happen in our school anyway. So you can see like a lot of the inclusion that we try to promote here. It is work very well in terms of just like if you look at in the big picture. The only one thing that I cannot do it now, and it's just like still in my concern, is a request from the student to have the restroom, like the unisex restroom and the toilet for the LGBTQ part, or maybe like some of the student would like to use the unisex restroom, like I mean like a boy and girl just use the restroom like together. This is one of the area that I'm working on it. Yeah, I try many times to talk with the right person and talk about it, but there are a lot of like discussion among among the stakeholders. So last but not least, I would like to answer your question about the challenging, right? The challenge, like one challenge is balancing the different perspective. Yeah, that is a challenge for me. The different perspective that to ensuring that every student feels safe. Yeah, the change also take time, but I need to building the understanding and the trust of the parents and also the student. If I go back when I was the teacher like last 10 years ago, some of the parents still not okay with what like my child is LGBTQ. So what should I do, Mr. Boy? I said you shouldn't do nothing. You should accept it. You should celebrate it. It is a kind of just like is this your child anyway? But nowadays it changed a lot. Even the opinion of the parent itself, or even like the attitude or the perception of the parent is kind of like changed. So later, like I would like to promote like this, like because the demonstration school is a pilot school anyway. So we do the pilot like teaching, learning, and especially the well-being to take care of the student. So we are very happy that like we serve the society like to be the pilot school. A lot of school in each day come to our school to see how we can manage, like especially the LGBTQ issue and concerns. And in some like Thai school, they might have a lot of like concern. The bullying, like Dr. Timo just said, is the number one that we can hear a lot, that the friend just bully the another friend. But it's quite rarely happen here because we embed that, we include that into the school policy. I mean that like it's not only specific for the LGBTQ plus student, but it's every student need to treat at the same standard. That we just like to make sure that we are respect everyone at the same. Yeah. So for the first question, I will like stop like now and I will pass to you again. Yeah.
It's okay. Thank you, Dr. Satipov. I was kind of laughing by myself when you were saying something like, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I think some of the people here, like 15 years ago, they were like 5 years old or like 7 years old.
Oh, you know
Um,
my age now.
no, I mean, because 15 years ago, I was in high school, and
Yeah.
I absolutely agree that um, it was completely different back then compared to now. Like, yes, it's again, as Dr. Timo once mentioned, it's not perfect, but it is definitely better. And I see that in a lot of the, you know, young people now who are now also like young adults, like 20-year-olds, 23-year-olds, like the education environment that they've grown up with are so different from what I've experienced 15 and 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful to hear also an example from your school about the student and teacher um, like diversity and inclusion policy. It's really, I think you've really highlighted something there, that when we talk about learning environments, it's really important for us to not just engage the student, but also the teachers. And as you also mentioned, you need to balance different perspectives and building understanding and trust, especially with families. It's not easy. And as you said, it takes a lot of time. So thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for your insights. That was really wonderful. Um, Now I'd like to move on to Riddhi. So as a young advocate for LGBTIQ plus issues, um, how do you, as a young person, create an inclusive learning environment, and what were the challenges that you faced as a young person?
Okay, well, hi. Thank you, everybody. I think there's like two questions, right? But I'll just start first with like kind of like my background. Basically, I'm a transgender man, and like let's say 10 years ago, or even now, I think not a lot of people in Thailand really knows what a transgender man is. Like we more used to the concept of like a trans woman or like gay, but trans men is, let's say, like is very uncommon. I mean, people see like tomboys and everything, and they associate me with that, but it doesn't really reflect who I am. And so like during when I was in school, let's say high school, I struggled a lot with like trying to get people to understand what's going on with me. And also it was hard sometimes because at first I didn't understand myself yet. And at points in like high school or even younger during primary school, I felt like all of these knowledge and education on my gender identity and my sexual orientation as well, because I also like men, is very complicated and I had to figure things out by myself. And sometimes it really felt like super isolating because I explained to my friends, I explained to people, and they don't really get it. They're gonna ask me questions like, so if you want to be a man, then why do you still like men? So what's the point of that? You know, why transition if you still like men? And I'm like, that's a different thing. So I'd say just this is like an example, but just to really give um a view on how it feels sometimes to say and to, express yourself, but feel misunderstood, feel like nobody can see you. It's a very isolating experience, and I felt terrible, and I had depression since I was 13 because of this. I think that's one of the main reasons, and that's really reflected on Ajahn work. And also I read that and I resonated with that like completely. So the challenge is, I guess, with adults, and not just like adults, but peers as well, and education in general, is that I don't think people sometimes have a deep understanding of what our needs are or what we are. And they don't see the importance of these policy implementations, right? So like when I say I wanted to wear a uniform that, you know, resonates with who I am, they're gonna say like, so they're gonna say things like, why would that, be important to you in terms of education? Aren't you here to study? But to be able to really study and really enjoy learning, you have to be able to like feel like you are safe, you are yourself. And that's why like you don't feel like scared to question things. You don't feel scared to ask things or ask for things sometimes. Um, and yeah, I guess in terms of challenges, it's a lot of misunderstanding and the lack of like proper policy implementation, let's say in Thailand. But that was high school years ago. So moving to like university, I feel like I went to Thammasat University, and the reason why I chose that was because that university, particularly at that time, was because they allowed students to wear whatever they want. Like we want to university. Um, but we still have to wear our uniforms during exams. So that was a bit of a, I was scared of that, honestly, even though it was just like one or couple of days in one semester that I had to do that. But it was still fear that occurred in me, like, okay, if I was able to like do everything fine, but if I just mess up on this one day, would anything happen? Would I get discriminated on? And turns out in my faculty of law, my the staffs are all fine and everything. But in like I went to do an exam on another faculty, which is a more conservative faculty. That's actually how it is in Thailand sometimes. Like some faculties are more conservative than others. So in the other faculty, I I was flagged by the person at the examination room. She came up to me and said, uh well, she saw my ID, and also back then I wasn't on testosterone yet, so my voice didn't crack. I looked very feminine. And so she said, after your exam, please come and see me. And then I thought, like, what did I do? Like, did I cheat without even knowing? But so after the exam, pretty much she came up to me and said, so who allowed you to do this? And I'm like, what? Sorry, what? And she said, you're wearing a uniform that is not in accordance with your title, because my title is Miss. And so that was like, I don't know how to explain. I was like, nobody allowed me, but also my faculty was fine with it. So I thought this was fine because everything is according to what's it called, like the standards of the university. I didn't wear sandals to the exam. So that was one of the like sort of discrimination I face. And even though it was not like um active bullying or like let's say like violence in a way, but I felt like violated by that. Like I'm just here being myself, doing an exam. Why am I getting flagged as if I've done something so wrong? Um, and so okay, time skip now to like master's degree in the UK, um, it was so different in terms of like understanding, in terms of acceptance, and in terms of policies as well in the university. Like there's a very clear standard of what you can do and what you like cannot do to other people. So let's say if I get discriminated on, the person that I can report, like I can report this person to the university and they would actually take action. Whereas in Thailand, if I did report somebody for doing things like, bullying or anything, they would just be like, "Oh, you guys can just talk it out, would be fine." So as Ajahn Timo really said, it's really, really important that, these policies that exist, they're actually effective in implementation. Because as a youth, sometimes, you don't actually feel safe or brave enough to really speak up. And with a system that doesn't even do things when you do speak up, it's even harder, to tackle things. And sometimes you just feel like you have to deal with everything alone, like, or just like belittle yourself, like shrink yourself so that cause problems for other people. And that's like in a way silencing your voice. But yeah, the reason why what's it called? Like it's very important for youths to really speak up about our experiences and really like speak up on what's affecting us is because like firstly, we are the person who are affected by, these problems. Sometimes adults design stuff for us and it has been effective and helpful, but on a deeper end, we really know what's still missing, what can be improved, and what are like the best practices still that can be like done from the youths themselves and like integrated into like the bigger system. I'm speaking in a very like big way, but pretty much I'm just saying as the youth is the center of, what we have to go through in education. Um, it's very important that we speak up and sometimes I feel it's important as well to note that we are restricted not just by who we are, identity, but there's also things like age, hierarchy like that, and also like qualifications as well, like in titles and everything. And sometimes it's like, oh, I'm a teacher, so I'm allowed to say this and I'm right. But you are young, you don't know much about this, so just, deal with it. So yeah, I guess I'm speaking a very long way, but like lots of things covered. But it's very important that, you speak up, but sometimes you don't really feel safe to do that. So there's also like very important that teachers and educators step in and notice like what's going on. Because one of the things I found helpful during high school, even though I was struggling, and teachers and people don't understand me, but they don't understand, but they don't shun me away. Like they don't make it worse, but they also observe me like and what I'm doing and they support in the best way they can, like just by asking, do you need something? And that's already a big question. So yeah, it's a big thing, but yeah, sending it back to you now to Leo. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Rudy. I think something common that we've heard from all three panelists is really the importance of working together. These partnerships between um, students as well as educators, the school administration. It can't just be a um, like I don't know, one-way street of like the students trying to advocate for a more inclusive school policy. The school administration, the educators also need to take the initiative and have, I guess, an open mind to have a discussion in the first place regarding LGBTIQ plus issues to really start this conversation and start brainstorming on how the school can be more LGBTIQ plus inclusive. It can't just be, you know, maybe sometimes the school administration wants to be LGBTIQ plus inclusive, but they don't consult with students. So they end up doing the wrong thing. So yeah, I think that's the common thing that I've heard from all of you. Thank you all so much, panelists, for your wonderful insights. Unfortunately, we don't have more time for questions. I kind of would like to ask a bit more questions, but we don't have more time for questions. So I would like to open the floor to anyone in the audience if there Oh, okay. If there, I was going to say if there were any questions, but I see in the chat box a question from Mika. Mika, would you like me to read this for you, or would you like to speak?
I love to speak. Okay,
Okay.
thank you everyone so much for the panel. It was very wow, I learned a lot. And I wanted to ask because Thailand passed marriage equality, how did it impact youth lives and education? Because in Japan we're gonna have the Supreme Court ruling in 2026, so I really wanted to ask. Thank you.
Okay, so how
I,
did the bill? Okay, Dr. Timo.
maybe I can share a little bit. So I've been involved in another study which sort of longitudinally followed up a cohort of people that were first surveyed just before the marriage equality decision of the Thai parliament, and at first 1 month afterwards, and then 1 year after. And from that 1 month data, one thing that we noticed very clearly was that the participants told very much, I mean, it was a survey, but the participants indicated that the atmosphere was much better in general. The general atmosphere was much more positive. They felt much more accepted in society. So I think that's one thing which is not like maybe an immediate result from the law, but it's what happened even before it was implemented. So I think that's a symbolic kind of meaning that's still very important for many people. But I think there are also lots of laws and regulations still to be adjusted afterwards. And one thing that I think will be interesting is, well, important really, is what happens with parents who are legally the same sex or gender, and how are their kids met at school or university, and do they have the say in their shared child education and all this. I think that's still sort of work in progress, but I don't know if really knows something more. You put your hand up. Maybe you'd like to go from there.
Okay, thank you. So I guess from my view, it's more visibility for sure. At least like at first I feel like, being LGBT as a whole is like a bit of, like the other group of people. But nowadays that has been legalized. I think more people, even my parents, are more like open to what it is. Like, oh, they see stuff like, oh, there's pride everywhere. So I guess what you're doing with work is fine. There's work for you. That's their point with this. But in a way, visibility is very important. And as soon as there's more visibility, there are more identities that people can learn about. So at first it might be just like like a male uh to like okay homosexual couples, and now they're learning more about the more complicated like queerness of how LGBT people are. And yeah, that's at least like as Timo said, it really helps with atmosphere and we feel lighter, we feel more like accepted in a way that's like, we could just be more open for me, I think. And in terms of like education itself, in schools and everything, I see like when I interview younger students or even teachers themselves, they actually are more open for real. Like they have changed. It's been like maybe only like a year or two, but everything has changed in terms of whenever I go back to school to visit. It's a like a whole new world, and that's a good thing. So visibility is one thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Timo and Riddy, and thank you, Mika, for that question. Um, I can take one more question from the audience if there's any. Does anyone want to ask our panelists a question? Give you a few seconds. 1, 2, 3. Okay, closed. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists, for the very insightful and very rich discussion. Before we close this webinar, wait a second. Yes, before we close this webinar, I would really like to do a more interactive closing, rather than me just talking. So I would like to invite you all to go back to Mentimeter and answer this question. What should be prioritized to make education more inclusive? So again, you can scan the QR code on your phones or go to menti.com and input the codes. What should be prioritized? Okay, I see student agency and leadership, definitely. Safety, national policies in terms of well-being and curriculum. Youth-led actions and peer learning, quality of education, equal, safe, inclusive, and accessible, visibility with safety. Let's see, collaboration instead of confrontation, and to hear the voices of, I think, youth. Okay, yes, these are definitely important points that we definitely need to prioritize, student agency and leadership. We need to center young people in all our conversations that involve young people, especially young LGBTIQ plus people. I'd like to move on to the next question. Maybe, as a sort of reflection for everyone, but feel free to uh, add your reflections here. What action would make the biggest difference in your context? We all have different contexts. Some of us are in more conservative contexts. What would make the biggest difference? Okay, explicit commitment of protection and better change from the government. Yes, absolutely important. Legal gender recognition. Also gender recognition. Yes, we definitely need those things. Amplifying youth leadership. Anyone else? Mental health prioritization, yes, and a change of national curriculums. So some of these things are not, they would definitely make the biggest difference, but they're also not easy to do, like the legal gender recognition for one. I think a lot of our countries are really trying to have some sort of national legal gender recognition law, but it's also taking a lot of time. Curriculum revisiting. Yes, we definitely need to look at national curriculums. And I see a commitment from school leaders, teachers, and students. Now, just want to sneak in very, very last question before we end this. What change would you like to see next? I'm thinking of like maybe in the next 5 years, what do you think is possible? Like a possible change. Earlier, we were talking about, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, things were very, very different. Now, where we are now, what change would you like to see in maybe the next 5 years? Okay, I see more youth involvement in the decision-making process of making a better education system. Very, very important. Students are empowered to organize independently. Yes. So I'm sensing again more conversations around centering young people, more LGBTQ plus representation and youth involvement in leadership positions. Students can be themselves while feeling safe in and outside of schools. Yes. Start with gender recognition and anti-bullying laws. Okay. Any last reflections or changes that you would like to see? Okay, last one. All schools can adapt practices in ways that align with their culture while protecting students' dignity and rights. There is no single model of inclusive practices in school. Absolutely true. Then there's another one. Because in Asia, many countries, LGBTQ is still criminalized. I hope that will change. Yes, we all hope. We all hope that. Okay. So thank you everyone for your input. Thank you for your participation. This has been a very, very enlightening webinar. We've heard a lot about, practical approaches, some examples from Philippines and Japan on what they did and what they've achieved in terms of advocating for LGBTIQ plus inclusion in universities. And we've heard from our panel experts about policy changes, some examples in schools, in secondary schools, about how an LGBTIQ plus inclusive learning environment can look like. And we've also heard some of those challenges, as Riddhi talked about earlier, some of the challenges that young people still face today that are really important for us to address. So to end this webinar, again, I would like to thank everyone for your participation. I'd like to thank you for your time. Thank you very much. And this is the end. Thank you.
Thank you for
Bye.
the
Thank you,
moderation, Leo and
everyone.
Barapot. Thank
Thank
you, everybody.
you.